The radio crackled at 0214 hours, and the words that came through have ended everything. Colonel Marcus Vance stood in the Tactical Operations Center at FOB Kestrel, staring at the situation board like a man watching his own funeral procession. Outside, the blizzard howled against the reinforced walls. Inside, 17 staff officers and communications specialists worked in near silence, their faces illuminated by the pale glow of monitors, each of them pretending not to hear what they had all just heard. Say again, Kestrel Actual. Confirm last transmission. Vance's voice was steady. He had spent 23 years cultivating that steadiness. Wars were won by men who could keep their voices level when everything else was falling apart. This is Kestrel Actual. Confirm all previous. Notification teams and chaplain services are to prepare for mass casualty protocol. 1st Battalion, 4th Marines is to be classified as combat ineffective, presumed lost. Air assets remain grounded for minimum 48 hours. No rescue operations are authorized at this time. Acknowledge. Somewhere in the frozen mountains beyond those walls, 1,000 Marines were running out of ammunition. The Crackle Valley had been a trap waiting to happen. Intelligence had called it a moderate-risk transit corridor. Ground commanders had called it the fastest route to Firebase Overlord. Everyone had been wrong. The 3rd Mountain Division had materialized from 3 directions simultaneously, sealing the southern passage with armor, establishing crew-served weapons positions along the eastern and western ridgelines, and transforming a valley into a kill box. The Marines had been in that valley for 61 hours. Their ammunition consumption was running at 300% of projected rates. Mortar rounds were down to single digits. The battalion commander's last transmission, nearly 40 minutes old, had consisted of 8 words. We will hold until ammunition expended. Semper Fi. That had been the last communication before the interference from the storm had made radio contact impossible. Colonel Vance turned away from the board. His operations officer, a major with hollow eyes and coffee stains on his sleeve, was waiting for direction. Sir, the review board will want to know. The review board will know what I tell them. Vance's jaw tightened. We have no rotary assets. Fixed wing can't operate in this ceiling. Ground relief is 19 hours out through mountain passes that are currently impassable. The math does not work, Major. The math has not worked for 6 hours. I am not going to pretend otherwise, and neither are you. The Major nodded slowly. There was nothing else to say. 7 kilometers to the northeast, at an elevation of 4,400 meters, 2 women lay motionless beneath a thin layer of accumulated snow. They had heard the transmission too. If that opening hooked you, stay with me. This story only gets more intense. Subscribe now for more incredible true stories of courage, and hit that notification bell. Drop a comment and tell me where you're listening from. Now, let me take you back to the ridge where everything changed. Sergeant First Class Elena Marsh had not moved in 11 hours. Her body had passed through cold, through numbness, through the dull ache of joints held too long in one position, and had arrived somewhere on the other side of discomfort entirely. She existed now in a place beyond feeling, a state of pure operational awareness that she had learned to achieve in her 9 years of service. Beside her, Corporal Dana Marsh lay with her eye pressed to the spotting scope, her breathing slow and measured, her waterproof notebook open beneath the protective tarp, despite the darkness. Dana was 26 years old, 5 years younger than her sister, and she had spent the last decade learning everything Elena knew about staying alive in places where survival was not guaranteed. The radio message had reached them through their encrypted satellite uplink, 12 seconds delayed, slightly garbled by atmospheric interference, but comprehensible. Combat ineffective, presumed lost. Elena's. I remained pressed to the scope of her rifle. Through the glass, she could see the flicker of muzzle flashes in the valley below, faint, intermittent, growing less frequent as the hours passed. 1,000 men were dying down there, not all at once, not dramatically. They were dying the way men die in sieges, through attrition, through exhaustion, through the steady mathematical reduction of ammunition to zero. Command's calling it, Dana whispered. Her voice was barely audible above the wind. I heard. Stand down order includes all reconnaissance elements. Dana's breath fogged in the narrow space beneath their concealment tarp. That includes us. Elena did not respond immediately. She adjusted her scope 1 millimeter to the left, tracking the thermal signature of a vehicle moving along the western ridge. Enemy command and control track. Heavy communications antenna. The nerve center of the entire operation. Elena, I know what you're going to say. I'm going to say it anyway. Dana's voice carried no judgment, just information. If we act after that transmission, we're in direct violation of standing orders. Court-martial, dishonorable discharge, prison probably. And if we act and fail, we die up here. Nobody's coming for us. Not in this weather. Not with assets grounded. Elena finally turned her head, just enough to meet her sister's eyes. In the faint reflected light from the snow, Dana's face was a study in exhaustion and focus. They had been on this ridge for 11 hours, in temperatures that had dropped to -8°C, with winds gusting between 14 and 22 knots. They had eaten nothing but protein bars. They had urinated into collection bags, without moving from their positions. They had watched the enemy positions below with the patient attention of predators who understood that time was a weapon. How many rounds do we have? Elena asked. Combined? 87. And how many targets need to die for that corridor to open? Dana closed her eyes briefly, consulting the mental map she had been building since they arrived. 4 primary. The eastern MG emplacement, maybe 1,200 meters. The western MG emplacement, closer to 1,500. That command track at 1180. And the mortar position they got dug in on the southern approach. Call it 1,900. 4 targets. 87 rounds. Elena turned back to her scope. The math works. The math assumes we don't get counter-sniped. The math assumes they don't have drones up. The math assumes my wind calls are perfect in a storm that's gusting 18 knots. The math assumes your knee holds. There it was. The thing they never talked about. 4 years ago, Elena had taken a training fall that had damaged the soft tissue in her left knee. She had hidden it through sheer determination and creative physical therapy reports. She had run operations on that knee across 3 continents. But cold made it worse. Stress made it worse. Sustained static positioning followed by sudden movement made it worst of all. My knee will hold, Elena said. You don't know that. I know that if it doesn't, you'll finish the work. Dana was quiet for a long moment. Below them, a mortar round detonated somewhere in the valley. A flash of orange light, followed by the distant thunder of impact. Somebody's position just got bracketed. Somebody's friend just became a casualty statistic. Command made the defensible call. Dana said finally, Colonel Vance isn't wrong. With the information he has, writing them off is the rational decision. He can't see what we can see. No, he can't. Which means we're about to disobey a direct order based on information that exists only in this position. And if we're wrong about any of this, we'll have thrown away our careers and possibly our lives for nothing. Elena's finger rested outside the trigger guard. The .338 Lapio Magnum was cold against her cheek, the synthetic stock a familiar weight, after a decade of carrying variations of this weapon. She had fired this rifle at targets out to 2,000 meters in training. She had made shots at 1,400 meters in combat, but never in conditions like this. Never with this many lives depending on precision. Dana, yeah, we weren't put on this ridge by accident. We weren't positioned here for 47 hours just to observe and report. We're here because someone in intelligence knew this valley was high risk, and someone in operations wanted eyes on approaches, and someone in planning trusted that we would know what to do if everything went wrong. That someone didn't anticipate a complete communication blackout and a stand-down order from command. No, that someone anticipated us. Elena's voice was quiet but certain. 2 women who spent a childhood nobody volunteered for, learning how to survive when the system says survival isn't possible. 2 operators who don't require permission to do the right thing. 2 sisters who understand that sometimes a defensible decision and the correct decision are not the same thing. The wind gusted, driving fresh powder across their position. For 3 seconds, visibility dropped to near zero. When it cleared, Elena's scope was already tracking the eastern machine gun emplacement. 1,200 meters, maybe 1,300. She would need Dana's ranging to be certain. Give me the exact number, Elena said. Dana shifted her spotting scope with practiced smoothness. The data logger embedded in the housing began calculating. 1,340 meters. Wind from the northwest, currently 18 knots at our position, probably 14 gusting to 22 at target altitude. Temperature differential between us and them is approximately 14 degrees. There's 6 degrees warmer at elevation down there, which means your terminal ballistics will be slightly different than training scenarios. Copy. What's my hold? 7.3 mils elevation, 2.8 mils wind hold right. Dana paused. That's assuming the gust pattern stays consistent. If it shifts mid-flight, you're hitting rock. It won't shift. You don't know that either. Elena smiled in the darkness. It was not a happy smile. I know that I have 47 rounds, you have 40, and somewhere down there 1,000 men have maybe 4 hours left before they run dry. I know that Colonel Vance made the defensible call, and I know that we're about to make the correct one. I know that when this is over, either we'll be dead, or we'll be court-martialed, or we'll be the reason those men go home to their families. Those are the only 3 outcomes. And you're okay with those odds? I've never been okay with any odds. That's not the point. Elena settled her breathing into the slow rhythm that preceded a shot. The point is that we're here, and they're dying, and we can change that. The point is that 87 rounds is enough if every single one of them counts. The point is that I'm not going to lie on this ridge and listen to 1,000 Marines run out of ammunition, while some colonel 7 kilometers away writes letters to their mothers. Dana reached over and squeezed Elena's forearm once. Brief, firm, the only acknowledgement either of them would give to what they were about to do. First target is the Eastern MG, Dana said, her voice shifting into professional cadence of a spotter calling a shot. 1,340 meters. Wind correction, holding at 2.8 mils right. You have a 2-second window when the gunner exposes his head during reload cycle. How often is he cycling? Every 47 rounds. Call it every minute and a half. Next window, in approximately 30 seconds. Elena's world narrowed. The cold disappeared. The wind became data rather than sensation. Her finger moved the trigger, taking up the slack with the precision of a surgeon. 20 seconds. Dana counted down in her peripheral awareness. The enemy gunner was methodical, which meant he was predictable. Predictable meant dead. In combat, consistency was a gift that snipers prayed for. Target is cycling. 15 seconds. Elena's breathing stopped. Her heart rate, already low from hours of cold immobility, dropped further. The rifle became an extension of her nervous system. A 2.4 kilogram precision instrument capable of delivering a 250 grain projectile at 2,900 feet per second to a target the size of a man's head. 10 seconds. The scope found the edge of the machine gun position. Sandbags. Corrugated steel improvised overhead cover. Muzzle flash that pulsed like a dying heartbeat. 5. The gunner's head rose above the parapet. He was reloading, just as Dana had predicted. His hands moved with practice efficiency. He had probably loaded that PKM 10,000 times. Send it. Elena fired. The Lapua's recoil was a familiar pressure against her shoulder. The sound was swallowed immediately by the wind and snow. The muzzle flash was suppressed to a brief flicker, not invisible, but hard to localize. Through her scope, she watched the round trajectory. At this range, flight time was just over 2 seconds. 2 seconds of watching a bullet travel through blizzard conditions, fighting crosswinds, climbing against gravity, descending toward a target that was already moving. The gunner's head snapped back. His body collapsed behind the sandbag parapet. The PKM stopped firing. Target down, Dana confirmed, her voice professionally flat. Eastern MG is neutralized, shifting to secondary targets. Western MG emplacement, 1,520 meters, same firing pattern as Eastern. Wind has shifted to 21 knots, adjusting calculation. Elena cycled the bolt. Brass case ejected, smoking briefly in the cold air before disappearing into the snow. Fresh round chambered. 46 remaining. New hold, 8.1 elevation, 3.4 wind right. Gunner is in reload cycle. Next window, in approximately 50 seconds. Below them, something was happening. The Marines in the valley had noticed that the Eastern machine gun had stopped firing. They couldn't know why. The blizzard made visual confirmation impossible, but the absence of tracer fire from that direction was unmistakable. Radio traffic crackled through Elena's earpiece. Encrypted battalion frequency, barely audible through the interference. Single engagement, Eastern Ridge, unknown origin, advise all elements. Elena smiled grimly. Let them wonder. Let them hope. Western target approaching reload. Dana called. 30 seconds. This shot would be harder. Longer range. Stronger wind. And the temperature differential meant her bullet would behave differently at terminal velocity. Warmer air was thinner air. The projectile would drop less, drift more. Every calculation had to adjust. 20 seconds. Elena settled her breathing again. The rhythm was becoming automatic now. The familiar dance between preparation and execution that she had practiced 10,000 times. Some shots you made in training. Some shots you made in combat. And some shots, a rare few, you made when everything that mattered depended on your ability to place 250 grains of copper jacketed lead precisely where it needed to be. 10 seconds. The Western MG position flickered in her scope. She could see the barrel of the machine gun, a black line against the snow. She could see the improvised shelter, the thermal signature of bodies behind cover. She could not see the gunner yet. Target is cycling. Window open. He rose. Elena fired. The round flew high. She knew it before Dana confirmed it. A gust at the wrong moment, pushing projectile 3 inches above where it needed to be. The bullet struck the steel overhead cover and ricocheted into darkness. Miss, Dana said. He's ducking. We don't have another window for 90 seconds. I'm aware. They'll have a direction now. They'll start looking. I'm aware of that too. Elena's jaw tightened. 1 round wasted. 45 remaining. And now the enemy knew, at least approximately, where the shots were coming from. Counter-sniper protocols would be activating. Somewhere in that command track at 1,100 meters, an officer was giving orders. Find the shooter. Kill the shooter. Adjust calculation for the gust, Elena said. Already done. New hold. 3.8 wind right. But Elena, they would be ready. Then we don't give them time to be ready. Elena's voice was cold. Not angry. Just certain. What's the command track doing? Dana shifted her scope. The data logger clicked as it calculated new ranges. Command track is static. I count 6 personnel in and around the vehicle. Communications antenna is active. They're coordinating the response. If we take that out, their entire command and control collapses. Can I make the shot from this position? 1,180 meters. Wind is actually lighter at that angle, quartering from the northwest, maybe 10 to 14 knots. Temperature differential is similar. Yes, you can make the shot. Then we take the command element first. While they're still trying to figure out where we are, Dana hesitated. That changes the sequence. If we don't neutralize the Western MG before taking command track, they'll have 80 to 90 seconds to pour fire into the valley while we're repositioning. How many Marines will die in those 90 seconds? Dana was silent. How many, Dana? Estimated? 10 to 15, based on current casualty rates. Elena closed her eyes briefly. The calculus of war. 10 to 15 lives against the certainty of command coordination being destroyed. Without their command element, the enemy's response would be disorganized. Their anti-sniper protocols would lack direction. Their mortar fire would become random rather than targeted. It was the right call. It was also a call that meant choosing which Marines would die. Take the command track first, Elena decided. We accept the casualties from the Western MG during transition, then neutralize that position immediately after. Understood. Dana's voice carried no judgment, only acknowledgement. Shifting to command track. 1180 meters. Wind hold. 1.9 mils right. Target acquisition. Primary is a communications antenna. If you can take out the antenna and 1 or 2 personnel, their coordination falls apart. Elena reoriented her rifle. The motion was small, a few inches of adjustment, but after 11 hours of immobility, even that small movement sent pain shooting through her left knee. She ignored it. Pain was data. Data was manageable. Antenna is a stationary target, Dana continued. Personnel are moving. I count 2 figures near the track's rear hatch. 1 in the cab, 3 in conversation beside the antenna mast. Best opportunity is the antenna itself, followed by any target of opportunity that presents. Copy. Ranging on antenna. 1182 exactly. Wind steady at 12 knots. You're cleared hot. Elena fired. The antenna mast came apart in a shower of metal fragments. Communications equipment sparked and died. One of the figures standing near the mast staggered, hit by shrapnel. The others scattered. Antenna destroyed. One casualty from fragmentation. Command element is in disarray. Dana paused. They're evacuating the track. 3 personnel moving to cover. 2 remaining near the vehicle. Give me a shot. One figure is exposed beside the driver door. 1,200 meters, same wind hold. Elena cycled the bolt. Chambered a fresh round. Acquired the target. A man in winter camouflage. Shouting orders. Try to restore control to a situation that had just become uncontrollable. She fired. The figure dropped. Target down. Command element is combat ineffective. Weston MG is resuming fire. They're panicking, firing wild. 90-second window before they settle. Elena was already shifting back to the western position. 43 rounds. The night was still young, and she had 2 more positions to eliminate before the 1,000 Marines in that valley could begin their push south. Give me the western MG, she said. 1518 meters. Wind has dropped to 14 knots. They're in the lee of the ridge now that the storm is shifting. New hold. 2.6 wind right. 8 elevation. Gunner status? He's back on the gun, firing continuously. He knows something's wrong, but he doesn't know what. He'll stay on that weapon until someone tells him to move. Then he'll stay on that weapon forever. Elena fired. The western gunner's body slumped over the PKM's receiver. The weapon fell silent. Across the valley, 2 of the 4 primary threat positions have been neutralized in less than 4 minutes. Western MG down. Dana confirmed. Immediate threat reduction to Marines in the southern corridor is significant. They should be able to begin movement in... She stopped. Dana? Radio traffic. Someone in the valley is trying to raise us. Elena listened. Through the static and interference, a voice was calling on their reconnaissance frequency. Sergeant Major Reardon. Senior enlisted man for 1st Battalion. One of the men who was supposed to be dying. Reconnaissance element. This is Bravo actual. Reconnaissance element, respond. We are observing precision engagement on enemy positions. Request confirmation of friendly sniper support. Over. Elena hesitated. If she responded, she confirmed their position. She also gave the enemy a radio signal to triangulate. But if she didn't respond, the Marines might not understand what was happening. They might not be ready to capitalize on the opportunity she was creating. Send response. Dana said quietly, they need to know. Elena keyed her transmitter. Bravo actual, this is Recon 16. We have overwatch on your position. Enemy eastern and western MG emplacements are neutralized. Command element is destroyed. Recommend immediate movement south. We will provide covering fire and targeting intelligence. Acknowledge. The radio was silent for 6 seconds. Then Sergeant Major Riordan's voice came back, and there was something in it that Elena had not expected. Not relief, not gratitude. Something closer to disbelief. Recon 16, we were advised all support elements were standing down. Please confirm you are authorized for engagement. Elena met Dana's eyes. This was the moment, the decision that could not be undone. Bravo actual, we are authorized by observation. Recommend movement. We will cover. Out! She released the transmitter before Reardon could ask follow-up questions. There was no point in explaining the nuances of insubordination to a man who was trying to keep 1,000 Marines alive. He didn't need to know that she had just disobeyed a direct order from Colonel Vance. He needed to know that someone was killing the enemy. More to position next, Dana said. 1,900 meters. This is the longest shot of the night. Wind. Gusting 22 at our elevation. Target altitude is approximately 300 meters below us. Call it 16 to 18 knots at terminal. Temperature differential is 8 degrees. The round is going to behave differently than anything you fired before. What's the hold? Dana worked the calculation. Her notebook was covered in shorthand notation now. Ranging data, wind corrections, temperature adjustments. 9 years of training distilled onto paper the size of a paperback book. 9.7 mils elevation. 4.1 mils wind hold right. Elena, at this range, even a perfect shot has maybe a 70% chance of hitting. The variables are too extreme. Then I'll take 2 shots. With counter-sniper elements activating, with their anti-sniper teams probably already moving, how long before those teams are a threat? Dana considered. They'll need to acquire our approximate position, then move a team into engagement range. In this weather, through this terrain, 20 minutes to get a reasonable firing solution. 30 to 40 minutes to get a team within effective range of our position. Then we have time. We have time if everything goes perfectly. We have time if they don't have drones. We have time if... Dana, Elena's voice cut through her sister's concerns. We have time because we're going to make it work. The mortar position dies, and the southern corridor opens completely. The Marines push south, and by the time those anti-sniper teams get here, there's nothing left to protect. And if they have drones, then we deal with drones. Dana exhaled slowly, the cold air fog in front of her face, a brief cloud that dispersed in the wind. Then she settled back behind her spotting scope. 1,900 meters. Mortar pit is dug in behind a rock outcropping. I count 4 crew members. The tube itself is visible. They're in the middle of a fire mission. If you hit the ammunition cache, secondary explosions will do the rest. Where's the cache? Behind and to the left of the tube. Maybe 2 meters of separation. You won't be able to see it directly, but I can talk you onto it. Elena adjusted her scope. 1,900 meters. Nearly 2 kilometers. At this distance, even the best precision rifle in the world became a tool of probability rather than certainty. Wind could shift. Temperature layers could bend the trajectory. The shooter's heartbeat could move the barrel a fraction of a millimeter, and at 1,900 meters, a fraction of a millimeter translated to a miss measured in feet. She had made shots like this in training. Never in combat. Never when it mattered. Ready when you are, she said. Target is the rock face 2 meters left of the mortar tube. If you strike that surface at the right angle, fragmentation, and ricochet should hit the ammunition stack. If you miss, you'll need to adjust right and try for the crew directly. Copy. Wind check. 18 knots sustained. Gusting 24. I'm giving you the calculation for sustained. If you fire during a gust, you're hitting nothing. Understood. On your call. Elena measured her breathing. 1 breath. 2. On the 3rd exhale, the world became very small and very clear. The mortar position existed at the end of a tunnel of focus that excluded everything else. The cold, the fear, the knowledge that she was running out of time and ammunition. She waited for the gust to pass. The wind dropped. 18 knots. Maybe less. She fired. The round traveled for nearly 3 seconds. Elena watched it through her scope, tracking the tiny disturbance in the air that marked its passage. At the end of that 3 seconds, the rock face beside the mortar tube exploded into fragments. Hit on target surface, Dana said. Secondary. Stand by. Yes, secondary detonation. Ammunition is cooking off. Mortar position is destroyed. Below them, the southern corridor was open. Bravo actual. This is Recon 1-6. All 4 primary targets are neutralized. Southern corridor is open for movement. Advise immediate push. We will maintain overwatch for suppression of targets of opportunity. Acknowledge. Sergeant Major Riordan's response came faster this time. Recon 1-6. Bravo actual acknowledges. Beginning movement south. All elements. This is Bravo actual. Execute movement to rally point echo. Say again, execute movement to rally point echo. The corridor is open. The radio erupted with acknowledgments. Company commanders relaying orders. Platoon leaders organizing movement. 1,000 Marines who had expected to die, beginning the slow, dangerous process of extraction. They're moving, Dana said. There was something in her voice that had not been there before. Not triumph, just acknowledgement. Elena, they're actually moving. Then we keep them moving. The next 47 minutes were the longest of Elena's life. She fired 11 more rounds during that window, suppressing targets' opportunity as the enemy attempted to regroup. A patrol moving to reinforce the western position. A vehicle attempting to flank the Marine column. Individual fighters who exposed themselves long enough for her scope to find them. Dana called wind corrections for each shot. Her voice never wavered. Even as her fingers grew numb from the cold, even as her waterproof notebook became a dense catalog of engagement data that would later be studied by analysts who would never understand what it felt like to write those numbers. At 0317, the first Marine elements reached Rally Point Echo. At 0344, the battalion's rear guard began extraction. At 0401, Elena noticed a thermal signature. "Contact north," she said quietly. "Dana, confirm." Dana shifted her scope. The data logger clicked. For 3 seconds, neither of them spoke. Anti-sniper team, 12 personnel, spread formation, moving toward our ridge from the northeast. Range approximately 1,600 meters and closing. They have dogs. Dogs. 2. German shepherds by the gate. They're tracking through the snow. Elena processed this. Dogs changed everything. Dogs didn't care about wind or visibility. Dogs followed scent, and she and Dana had been on this ridge for nearly 14 hours. Their scent signature would be unmistakable. Rate of closure? In this terrain, 45 minutes to contact, maybe less. The dogs will accelerate that. Any indication of drone support? Dana scanned the sky. The blizzard had begun to ease slightly. Visibility was improving from near zero to perhaps 200 meters. Still terrible for visual observation, but drones operated on thermal imaging. Weather mattered less to them. Negative visual on drones. But Elena, if they have a surveillance drone, it would explain how they located our ridge so quickly. They might have been tracking our muzzle flashes since the first shot. Assume they have drone support. What's our timeline? Dana calculated. If they deployed a thermal imaging drone at first engagement, it's been in the air for almost 50 minutes. Standard endurance is 60 to 90, depending on the platform. Either it's already out of fuel, or it's got 4 to 40 minutes of flight time remaining. And the anti-sniper team? Closing. 1,400 meters now. Elena looked at her ammunition count. 34 rounds remaining. 34 rounds against 12 trained hunters with dogs and possible aerial support, while 1,000 Marines were still in the process of extraction below. "We can't stay here," she said. "Where do we go?" "Summit is 400 vertical meters above us. Descent is suicide. We'd be walking into their approach vector. Then summit it is." Dana stared at her. "Elena, that climb requires ice axes. It requires functional knees. It requires visibility we don't have. And staying here requires us to fight 12 men with dogs in a position they've already bracketed. I'll take the climb. Your knee will hold." Elena was already gathering her equipment. The tarp came down. The concealment snowpack was brushed aside. For the first time in 14 hours, she was fully exposed to the elements. The cold hit her like a physical blow. "Move," she said. "We climb." The first 100 meters were manageable. The ridge slope was steep, but not vertical, covered in a layer of fresh powder that actually helped with traction. Elena's knee protested with every step, but it held. Dana moved beside her. Spotting scope strapped her pack, rifle slung across her back. At 200 meters of elevation gain, the slope became a wall. "Ice axes out," Elena ordered. They had carried the tools for exactly this contingency, an emergency extraction route that nobody had expected them to use. The axes were compact, lightweight, designed for technical mountaineering rather than combat. They were also the only things standing between them and a 3,000-foot fall. Elena set the first swing. The axe bit into ice beneath the snow layer, holding her weight as she pulled herself upward. Her knee screamed. She ignored it. "Drone," Dana said suddenly. "Elena, I've got a thermal signature 200 meters east and climbing. It's making a search pattern. How long until it scans our position?" "For minutes, maybe less. For minutes to cover 200 more vertical meters on a face that required careful axe placement and stable footing. For minutes with damaged knee and 34 rounds of ammunition and an anti-sniper team closing from below." Elena climbed faster. Her muscles burned. The cold that had numbed her extremities during the hours of immobility was now a different kind of enemy. Her body was generating heat faster than the wind could steal it, creating a thermal signature that any decent drone operator would spot immediately. 3 minutes. Another axe placement. Another pull. Her knee buckled slightly on the purchase, forcing her to redistribute weight to her arms. The strain was brutal. 9 years of service had made her strong, but strength had limits. 2 minutes. Dana was falling behind. She was younger, less injured, but she was also carrying heavier equipment. The spotting scope, the data logger, the notebook full of engagement records that would be the only proof of what they had accomplished tonight. Dana, move. I'm moving. But she was struggling. The slope at this elevation was nearly vertical, and the fresh powder was masking treacherous ice beneath. One wrong step would send her sliding back down the face. 1 minute. Elena reached the crest. The summit plateau was narrow, perhaps 50 meters wide, but offered concealment in the form of wind-carved snow formations. She rolled over the edge and immediately began pulling Dana up behind her. 30 seconds. Dana's hand found Elena's. Their fingers interlocked. Elena hauled with everything she had left, and Dana came over the crest just as the drone swept across their previous position. Down, Elena hissed. They flattened into a snow formation. White on white, their thermal signatures masked by the fresh powder they had displaced during the climb. The drone passed overhead. Elena could hear the faint whine of its motors, a high-pitched sound that the wind almost but not quite erased. It was scanning the ridge where they had been positioned 11 seconds ago. For 30 seconds, neither of them breathed. Then the drone banked east and began scanning a different sector. Lost us, Dana whispered. They lost us. For now. Elena sat up slowly, every muscle in her body protesting. But the dog team knows we climbed. They'll follow. They can't climb that face in the dark, not without ropes and anchors. They'll find a way. They always find a way. Below them, the sound of the firefight was fading. The Marines were completing their extraction. The 1,000 men who had been written off at 0214 were walking out of the valley, alive, because 2 women had chosen to disobey an order. But the work was not finished. The anti-sniper team was still out there, somewhere on the northern slope, and they would not stop hunting until they found their quarry. How many rounds you have left? Elena asked. 40. I have 34. 74 combined. Elena looked across the summit plateau. In the pre-dawn darkness, she could make out the shapes of rock formations and wind-sculpted snow. Cover, concealment, firing positions. We hold here until extraction. Extraction? Elena, no one knows where we are. The beacon will work. Elena pulled the emergency satellite beacon from her pack. It was a compact device designed to transmit coordinates to search and rescue satellites regardless of weather conditions. Standard issue for deep reconnaissance elements. We activate this and the cavalry comes. In how long? 90 minutes. Maybe less if they have QRF on standby. And the anti-sniper team arrives in 45 minutes. Maybe sooner if they find a climbing route. Dana did the math. So we hold this position against a 12-man team for 45 to 90 minutes with 74 rounds of ammunition. Yes. With your knee about to give out. Yes. In a blizzard. The blizzard's actually easing. Elena allowed herself a grim smile. That's something. Dana laughed. It was a tired sound, edged with exhaustion and fear and something that might have been admiration. You're insane. I'm practical. If I were insane, I would have followed that stand-down order and let 1,000 Marines die. Elena activated the beacon. A small green light blinked 3 times, confirming satellite acquisition. Somewhere, a rescue coordination center was receiving their coordinates. Somewhere, a helicopter was being spun up. All they had to do was survive until it arrived. Set up a firing position on the southern edge of the plateau. Elena said, "You'll cover the primary approach from the ridge. I'll take the eastern edge and cover any flanking attempt. Separated, overlapping fields of fire. If they come from one direction, we both engage. If they split, we divide and overwhelm." Dana hesitated. There was something she wanted to say, something about risk, about Elena's injuries, about the fact that this entire operation had been built on decisions that should have gotten them both killed. But she said none of it. Instead, she nodded once and moved to her assigned position. 27 minutes passed. Elena spent them watching the approaches, conserving her energy and trying not to think about the pain in her knee. The joint had swollen during the climb. She could feel the pressure building beneath the thermal layers of her uniform. Movement was becoming increasingly difficult. If she had to run, she wasn't sure she could. The first sign of the anti-sniper team came at 0448. Movement. Dana called through their short-range communication link. Southern approach. 6 signatures. Spread formation, approximately 800 meters. Copy. Eastern. Clear for now. But if they've got 6 south, they've got 6 somewhere else. Elena scanned her sector. The pre-dawn light was beginning to gray the horizon, casting the snow-covered plateau in shades of blue and purple. Visibility was improving, which was both blessing and curse. She could see further, but so could the enemy. Contact east, she reported. 4 signatures. They're flanking. You got 4 and I got 6? Looks that way. That's not fair. War isn't fair. Elena settled behind her rifle. For targets at, she ranged them through her scope. 640 meters and closing. Dana, are you good? I'm good. Then we hold. Whatever happens, we hold. The southern team engaged first. At 0452, Dana's rifle cracked once, twice, 3 times. Through their comms, Elena heard her sister's voice, calm, professional. 2 down. For remaining, they're taking cover. Elena's sector was about to become active. The 4-man flanking element had identified her position, not precisely, but close enough. They were spreading out, moving in a pattern designed to triangulate her location. She picked her first target, 630 meters. Wind, 12 knots from the northwest. Temperature, -6 at this elevation. Her calculation took less than 2 seconds. She fired. The man dropped. His companion scattered, but not fast enough. Elena cycled the bolt and fired again, clipping a second target in the shoulder. He went down, wounded but not dead. 2 down east, she reported. 2 remaining, taking cover. The next 12 minutes were a brutal exercise in precision violence. The anti-sniper team was good, trained, disciplined, and willing to take casualties to close the distance. But they were fighting uphill against shooters who had every positional advantage, in conditions that favored the defense. Elena expended 9 rounds. Dana expended 11. 7 of the 12 attackers were down, dead, or wounded badly enough that they were no longer combat effective. The remaining 5 regrouped. They're pulling back, Dana observed. Southern element is, yes, they're retreating below the ridgeline. They're not retreating. Elena knew the pattern. They're waiting for reinforcement. What reinforcement? The battalion is evacuating. There's no one left to. The drone returned. This time, it was not conducting a search pattern. It was flying low and fast, heading directly for Elena's position. In its wake, she could see movement on the eastern slope. More personnel, climbing hard, using the drone's intelligence to vector directly toward her hiding spot. New contacts, Elena said. Eastern slope. I count 6. No, 8. 8 additional personnel. 8? Where did they get 8 more? Reserve force. Or command element security. Or just really determined people who want us dead. Elena's ammunition count was down to 22 rounds. Dana had 29. Against 5 survivors plus 8 reinforcements. The math was no longer in their favor. Beacon status? Elena checked. Still transmitting. Estimated time to extraction, 42 minutes. We don't have 42 minutes. Then we make time. The drone was overhead now, circling at perhaps 200 meters altitude. Elena could have shot it down. It was well within her effective range. But doing so would waste ammunition and confirm her exact position. Better to let it observe and use the information defensively. They're going to rush us, Dana said. Coordinated assault. 5 from the south, 8 from the east. They know we're split. They know we're tired. They know the math. Let them come. Elena, let them come. Her voice was iron. This is what we trained for. This is what we chose. 1,000 Marines are walking out of that valley right now because we decided that some orders aren't worth following. If we die on this mountain, we die having done something that mattered. And if we live knowing we had the chance to die and chose to fight instead. Dana was quiet for a long moment. Then, our childhood therapist said you had control issues. Elena laughed despite everything. Our childhood therapist also said you were too emotionally dependent on authority figures. Look how well that turned out. Yeah, look at that. The assault began at 0507. They came from both directions simultaneously, using the terrain to mask their approach until the last possible moment. Elena and Dana had perhaps 90 seconds of warning before the first wave crested the plateau. Elena killed 2 in the opening seconds. Her knee was locked in position now. She couldn't move if she wanted to, but she didn't need to move. She had a firing position, ammunition, and targets. That was enough. Dana engaged the southern element with precise, economical fire. 1 round, 1 casualty. Cycle the bolt. Repeat. She was down to 18 rounds by the time the first wave broke against their defenses. "They're pulling back again," Dana reported, "but I can see movement in the secondary positions. They're organizing another push." "How many down?" "My count is 6 more. Total of 13 since this started. Maybe 5 or 6 still combat effective. 5 or 6 against 2 wounded. Exhausted women with dwindling ammunition." The math was better, but still not good. "Ammunition status?" Elena asked. 12 rounds. "I have 11. 23 rounds for what was likely to be the final engagement." The wind shifted. For the first time in 17 hours, Elena felt the storm begin to truly break. The snow stopped falling. The clouds started to thin. In the east, the first true light of dawn was coloring the horizon a pale gold. Sunrise. She had lived to see another sunrise. "Elena!" Dana's voice was different now, strained. "Elena, I've got a problem." "What kind of problem?" "I'm hit." Elena's blood went cold. "Where?" "Upper left arm." "Through and through, I think. It's bleeding pretty heavily." "When?" "Last engagement." I didn't realize until just now. The cold numbed it." "Can you still shoot?" A pause. Then, "Yeah, I can still shoot." "But Elena, I'm not going to be able to do this much longer." Elena wanted to go to her sister, wanted to cross the 60 meters of exposed plateau and provide medical care and comfort and all the things that sisters were supposed to provide. But she couldn't. If she left her position, the Easter approach would be undefended. The remaining hostiles would pour through, and both of them would die. "Apply pressure," Elena said. Her voice was steady despite the fear. "Use your hemostatic gauze if you've got it. Stay in position. 37 minutes until extraction." "I don't have 37 minutes." "You have 37 minutes because I'm telling you that you have 37 minutes. You survived a childhood we didn't choose, Dana. You survived 9 years in places that try to kill us. You survived this entire night. You are not going to die on a mountain in a country that most people can't pronounce while your sister is 60 meters away, unable to help you." Dana laughed. It was a weak sound, tinged with pain. "That's the most emotional thing you've said in 10 years. Don't get used to it." The final assault came at 0521. There were only 4 of them left, the survivors of an operation that cost them 10 good men to eliminate 2 women with rifles. They came smart, using every piece of cover the plateau offered, firing suppressive rounds that kept Elena and Dana pinned while they closed the distance. At 300 meters, Elena killed one. Her round took him in the chest, dropping him instantly. At 200 meters, Dana killed another, one-handed, bleeding. Her accuracy was still lethal. At 100 meters, the last 2 came over the final rise in a desperate rush. Elena's rifle was empty. She had fired her last round at 73 meters, striking a moving target through sheer instinct and muscle memory. The man fell, wounded, and lay screaming in the snow. The final attacker was 20 meters away when Dana's last round found him. He fell at the edge of Elena's position, his weapon still raised, his finger still on the trigger. Silence. Elena sat in that silence for what felt like an eternity. The plateau was scattered with bodies. The snow was stained red in patches. The drone that had been circling overhead had retreated. Fuel exhaustion, probably, and the only sound was the wind and her sister's labored breathing coming through the comms. "Dana, I'm here." The voice was weaker. "Elena, I'm having trouble staying awake." "Stay awake." "Trying." Elena finally moved. Her knee gave out on the first step, but she caught herself with her rifle as a crutch and kept going. 60 meters had never felt so far. Every step was agony, every movement a battle against a body that had been pushed beyond its limits. She reached Dana at 0534. Her sister was pale, her uniform soaked with blood from the wound in her arm. The hemostatic gauze had slowed, but not stopped the bleeding. Her eyes were half closed, her breathing shallow. "Hey," Elena said, kneeling beside her. "Hey, look at me." "I'm looking." 23 minutes. "That's all. 23 minutes, and you can sleep for a week." Dana smiled weakly. "I'm going to sleep for a month." "Fine. A month. But you have to stay awake for 23 more minutes." Elena pulled her emergency medical kit and went to work. The wound was bad. The bullet had passed through the meat of Dana's upper arm, missing the bone but hitting something vascular. Blood loss was significant. Without proper treatment, Dana had maybe 45 minutes before hypovolemic shock became irreversible. 23 minutes. They could make 23 minutes. Elena, Dana's eyes had drifted closed. "Keep them open. I want to tell you something. Tell me when we're extracted. I want to tell you now." Dana's hand found Elena's, gripping with surprising strength for someone who had lost so much blood. "That night when we were kids, when everything was bad, you kept me alive. You know that, right? You kept me alive." Elena's throat tightened. "Don't talk like this is goodbye. It's not goodbye. It's just, I never said it. And I should have said it a long time ago. Dana, thank you. That's all. Thank you." The helicopter arrived at 0549. For men in rescue configuration, fast roped to the plateau, weapons ready, expecting hostiles. What they found instead were two women, one bleeding from an arm wound, the other with a knee swollen to twice its normal size, surrounded by the bodies of 17 dead enemy combatants. The medic reached Dana first. "I've got a GSW to the upper left arm. She's lost a lot of blood. We need to move now." "Copy," the team leader responded. He turned to Elena. "Ma'am, can you walk?" "No." Elena admitted, "Not anymore." They lifted her onto a litter. The helicopter was waiting 50 meters away, rotors turning, ready for immediate extraction. As the rescue team carried her across the plateau, Elena looked back at the ridgeline where they had spent 17 hours of the worst night of her life. The sun was fully up now. The snow glittered in the morning light. The valley where 1,000 Marines had been trapped was visible in the distance, peaceful and empty. They had made it. "How many?" Elena asked the team leader as they loaded her into the aircraft. "How many what, ma'am?" "How many Marines walked out of that valley?" The team leader hesitated. Then he smiled, a genuine expression that cut through the exhaustion on his face. "All of them, ma'am. Every single one." Elena closed her eyes. She felt the helicopter lift off, felt the vibration of the rotors, felt her sister's presence in the litter beside her. The medics were working on Dana's arm, their voices calm and professional, their hands steady despite the chaos of the morning. All of them, every single one. 1,000 Marines, 87 rounds, two sisters who had decided that some orders weren't worth following. The flight to the forward surgical unit took 11 minutes. Elena stayed conscious for most of it, watching the monitors display Dana's vital signs, watching the color slowly return to her sister's face as the four fluids did their work. They were going to be okay. Both of them. Against every odd, despite every obstacle, they were going to survive. "Your knee needs surgery," the medic told Elena. "Significant soft tissue damage, possible ligament tear. You're looking at 4 to 6 weeks of rehabilitation. How soon can I return to duty?" The medic stared at her. "Ma'am, you just spent 17 hours on a frozen mountain, engaging in precision rifle work after a 6-hour climb with a damaged joint. Return to duty is not your primary concern right now. How soon? 8 weeks minimum, probably 12. And that's if everything goes perfectly during recovery." Elena nodded. 12 weeks. She could live with that. The surgical unit was chaos in control form. Medical personnel rushed to meet the helicopter, transferring Dana to a gurney and wheeling her toward the operating theater. Elena watched her sister disappear through the double doors, then finally allowed herself to relax. It was over. The night was over. The mission was over. The 1,000 Marines were safe. Colonel Vance arrived 3 hours later. Elena was in recovery bay, her knee immobilized, her body finally succumbing to the exhaustion she had held at bay for nearly 20 hours. She was drifting in and out of consciousness when she heard his voice. "Sergeant First Class Marsh." She opened her eyes. Vance was standing at the foot of her bed, his uniform immaculate despite the early hour, his face carefully neutral. "Colonel, You disobeyed a direct order. Yes, sir. You engage in combat operations after a stand-down transmission that you personally acknowledge receiving. Yes, sir. You potentially compromise the command structure's ability to make informed decisions by acting on intelligence that was available only to your position. Yes, sir. Vance was silent for a long moment. His eyes searched her face, looking for something, remorse perhaps, or defiance. What he found was neither. Just a woman who had made a choice and was prepared to accept the consequences. The review board will convene in 17 days, Vance said finally. You and Corporal Marsh will be required to provide full testimony regarding your decisions and actions during the night of the engagement. Everything you did will be examined. Every shot, every communication, every decision. Understood, sir. Do you have anything to say before that process begins? Elena considered the question. In 17 days, she would sit before a panel of officers who had not been on that ridge, who had not watched 1,000 men dying to the lens of a precision scope, who had not felt the weight of a trigger when pulling it meant salvation or court-martial. Sir, you made a defensible call, she said. With the information available at your position, the decision to stand down was rational. It followed doctrine. It minimized risk to remaining assets. Any commander in your situation would have reached the same conclusion. Vance's expression flickered. He had not expected that. But I was standing somewhere else, Elena continued. I had information you didn't have. I could see things you couldn't see. And from where I was standing, the defensible call and the correct call were not the same thing. You're saying you were right and I was wrong. I'm saying we were both right, sir, from our respective positions. The difference is that my position gave me options yours didn't. Vance studied her for a long time. The morning light coming through the recovery bay window caught the gray in his hair, the lines around his eyes that came from years of making decisions that determined whether men lived or died. 1,000 Marines walked out of that valley this morning, he said quietly. Every single one of them. Yes, sir. Because of you and your sister. Because they fought for 61 hours, sir. Because they held their positions and maintained discipline and trusted that someone would find a way to get them out. We just found a way. Vance nodded slowly. Then, without another word, he turned and walked out of Recovery Bay. 17 days later, Elena and Dana sat before the formal review board. The panel consisted of 5 officers, a major general, 2 colonels, a lieutenant colonel, and a captain who served as recorder. They had reviewed every piece of evidence available, the radio transmissions, the after-action reports, the engagement data from Dana's notebook, the testimony of Sergeant Major Reardon, and every other Marine who had been in that valley. The questions were precise and thorough. Why had they disobeyed the stand-down order? What factors had influenced their decision? Had they considered the possibility that their actions might fail? Had they understood the full implications of their choices? Elena answered each question honestly and completely. Yes, they had understood the implications. Yes, they had considered failure. Yes, they had made a conscious choice to disregard a lawful order from a superior officer. And yes, given the opportunity, they would make the same choice again. The deliberation took 4 hours. When the board returned, the Major General read the findings. This board has conducted a thorough review of the actions taken by Sergeant First Class Elena Marsh and Corporal Dana Marsh during the engagement at Crackle Valley. We have examined all available evidence and testimony. Our findings are as follows. Elena kept her face neutral. Beside her, Dana sat with the same composed expression, her arm still in a sling from surgery. The decision to engage in combat operations after receiving a stand-down order was technically in violation of the Uniform Code of Military Justice, Article 92, failure to obey order or regulation. Elena's heart was steady. She had expected this. However, this board also finds that the actions taken by Sergeant First Class Marsh and Corporal Marsh represented an extraordinary exercise of tactical judgment under conditions of extreme duress. The intelligence available to their position was materially different from the intelligence available to command elements. Their decision to act on that intelligence, while contrary to standing orders, resulted in preservation of approximately 1,000 lives. The Major General paused. When he continued, his voice carried a weight that Elena had not expected. It is a finding of this board that no violation of standing orders occurred. Elena blinked. That was not what she had expected. The stand-down order issued at 0214 hours was predicated on the assumption that all reconnaissance elements lacked the capability to influence the tactical situation. This assumption was incorrect. Sergeant First Class Marsh and Corporal Marsh possessed both the capability and the intelligence to take meaningful action. Their decision to act on that capability, while extraordinary, falls within the scope of tactical discretion granted to reconnaissance elements operating under conditions of limited communication with command. Dana exhaled slowly beside her. Elena remained still. Furthermore, this board recommends that Sergeant First Class Elena Marsh and Corporal Dana Marsh receive formal commendation for their actions during the engagement at Crackle Valley. Their intervention represented the kind of judgment that doctrine cannot produce and that training can only partially account for. The Major General closed his folder. The other members of the board sat in silence. This hearing is concluded. Sergeant First Class Marsh, Corporal Marsh, you are dismissed with the gratitude of the United States Armed Forces. Elena stood. Her knee protested, still recovering from surgery, but she ignored it. She saluted the board, Dana doing the same beside her. Then they walked out of the room, into a corridor lined with soldiers who had been waiting to hear the verdict. No one spoke. No one needed to. Later that night, Elena sat in her temporary quarters, staring at the blank page of her personal log. She had not written in it since before the mission. She had not known what to write. The words did not come. After everything that happened, the night on the ridge, the shots fired, the lives saved, the review board, the commendation, she could not find words that felt adequate. Dana knocked on the door and entered without waiting for a response. She was carrying 2 cups of coffee and had the look of someone who had not slept in far too long. "You're not writing," she observed. "No, me neither." Dana set one of the cups on Elena's desk. "I tried. Started 3 different entries. Couldn't finish any of them." "What did you try to say?" "I don't know. Something about meaning, I guess. What it meant. What we did." Elena picked up the coffee, but didn't drink. "Does it have to mean something?" "I don't know. Does it?" Silence stretched between them. Outside the window, the base was settling into its nighttime rhythm. Vehicles returning to motor pools. Soldiers ending shifts. The quiet industry of an operation that never truly stopped. 1,000 men, Dana said finally. "That's what I keep thinking about. 1,000 men have families somewhere. Parents, wives, kids, some of them. And they're all going home because we decided not to listen. We decided to do our jobs. Our jobs were to observe and report. We went somewhat beyond that." Elena almost smiled. "Somewhat. They'll know, you know. The men. Eventually, someone will tell them the story. 2 women on a ridge, disobeying orders, making shots that shouldn't have been possible. It'll become a legend. They'll tell it to their kids. Maybe. Does that matter to you?" Elena considered the question. She thought about the ridge, the cold, the weight of the rifle against her cheek. She thought about the calculations Dana had called, the wind corrections, the temperature adjustments. She thought about the targets falling one by one, and the corridor opening, and the sound of 1,000 Marines beginning to move. "We weren't up there for them to know," she said finally. "We were up there for them to come home." Dana was quiet for a long moment. Then she nodded once, slowly, as if accepting something she had already understood, but needed to hear spoken. "Yeah," she said. "I guess we were." They sat together in silence until the coffee grew cold. 2 weeks after the review board concluded, Elena returned to full duty status. Her knee would never be quite right again. The doctors had been clear about that, but it was functional enough for continued service. Dana's arm had healed faster. She had been cleared for light duty 3 days earlier. Their first assignment was another reconnaissance mission. Different mountains, different region, different operational parameters, but the same fundamental purpose: observe, report, and be ready to act when acting became necessary. The helicopter dropped them at a staging 0.7 kilometers from their target ridge. Elena had checked her equipment one final time. Rifle, ammunition, spotting scope, emergency beacon. The weight was familiar. The routine was comfortable. "Ready?" Dana asked. "Ready." They began to climb. Behind them, the sun was setting over mountains that stretched the horizon in every direction. The sky was painted in shades of orange and purple, the kind of beauty that existed only in places that humans rarely visited. Elena paused for a moment, looking back, letting the image imprint itself on her memory. Then she turned and continued upward. The mountain kept no record of what had happened here, or anywhere else. It did not remember the 1,000 Marines who had nearly died in a valley 100 kilometers away. It did not remember the 2 sisters who had spent 17 hours on a frozen ridge, making choices that doctrine could not predict and training could only partially prepare them for. The mountain just was, and tomorrow it would still be here, unchanged by everything that had happened beneath its slopes. Elena and Dana climbed in silence. There would be other nights like this, other ridges, other decisions that fell outside the neat boundaries of orders and protocols. They had chosen this life, or perhaps this life had chosen them, and there was nothing to do now but keep climbing, keep watching, keep being ready for the moment when readiness would be the only thing that mattered. The summit was still hours away. The mission briefing had been thorough but incomplete, as briefings always were. The enemy disposition was estimated, not confirmed. The timeline was flexible. Everything about this operation was subject to change based on what they observed from their position. That was the nature of reconnaissance work. You went where others could not, saw what others could not see, and made decisions based on information that existed nowhere else. Sometimes those decisions aligned with orders. Sometimes they didn't. Sometimes 1,000 lives hung in the balance, and the only people who could make a difference were the ones who had been placed in exactly the right position at exactly the right moment. Elena did not believe in fate. She believed in training, preparation, and the willingness to act when action was required. But she also knew that there were moments in life when the universe seemed to conspire to put the right people in the right place, and all that remained was to have the courage to do what the moment demanded. The ridge where they would establish their observation post was visible now against the darkening sky. A thin line of rock, exposed to wind and weather, commanding a view of the valley below. From that position, they would be able to see everything that mattered. From that position, if the moment came again, they would be ready. Dana caught her eye and smiled, a brief, tired expression that communicated everything without words. They had survived the night. They had saved 1,000 lives. They had faced the judgment of their institution and emerged with their honor intact. And now they were back on another mountain, ready to do it all again. "Let's move," Elena said. They climbed. This is Elena and Dana's story. And what it taught us is simple. Sometimes the right choice and the safe choice are not the same thing. Sometimes the people who save the day are the ones who refuse to stand down, when standing down would be easier. If this story kept you engaged, hit that like button and drop a comment telling me where you're listening from. Tell me, would you have followed that stand down order, or would you have done what Elena and Dana did? Subscribe if you haven't already. More stories like this are coming. Hit that notification bell so you don't miss the next one. The following morning, Elena woke before dawn. The observation post they had established was a shallow depression in the ridgeline, protected from the wind by a natural rock formation. Dana was already awake, her eye pressed to the spotting scope, watching the valley below with the patient attention of someone who understood that observation was its own form of combat. "Anything?" Elena asked. "Movement in the eastern sector. Too early to characterize. Might be civilian. Might not." Elena settled into her position beside her sister. The rifle was cold against her cheek, the scope showing a world painted in the blue-gray of early morning. This moment, this stillness before the day truly began, was something she had come to value over 9 years of service. In this moment, everything was possibility. Everything was potential. The sun crested the horizon. Light spilled across the valley below, illuminating snow-covered peaks and shadowed ravines. The world woke up slowly, reluctantly, revealing its secrets to those patient enough to wait for them. "There," Dana said quietly. "Eastern sector, 400 meters from the road junction. I count 6 vehicles. Looks like a convoy preparing to move." Elena adjusted her scope. 6 vehicles. Military configuration, based on the profiles. Heading west. If they maintain that trajectory, they'll pass through the northern corridor in approximately 45 minutes. Our corridor? Our corridor. Elena considered the implications. This was an observation mission. Their orders were clear. Monitor enemy movement patterns. Report significant activity. Do not engage unless fired upon. Standard reconnaissance parameters. But she also knew that corridors could become choke points. Choke points could become traps. And 6 vehicles moving west might be the leading edge of something much larger. Keep watching, she said. I want to know exactly what we're dealing with before we report anything. Copy. The convoy began to move. Elena tracked it through her scope, noting speed, formation, any identifying features that might help intelligence analysts understand its purpose. Dana recorded everything in her notebook, the same waterproof notebook that had documented every engagement during the night at Crackle Valley. Somewhere, 1,000 Marines were waking up to another day. Some of them probably thought about that night sometimes. The cold, the fear, the sound of machine gun fire that had suddenly stopped without explanation. Some of them probably wondered who had been up on that ridge, making shots that should have been impossible, turning a death sentence into a fighting chance. Elena did not think about whether they knew her name. She did not think about commendations or review boards or any of the bureaucratic machinery that had processed her actions into official records. She thought only about the convoy below, the mission at hand, the work that needed to be done. Convoy is slowing, Dana reported. They're stopping at the road junction. Why? Unknown. Waiting for something, maybe. Or wait. Dana adjusted her scope. I see additional vehicles approaching from the south. Looks like a link-up. Elena tracked the new contacts. For more vehicles, lighter configuration. Possible technical wagons. Possible infantry carriers. Whatever they were meeting the first convoy for a reason. This is getting bigger. Dana said, report it. Already drafting. Dana's pen moved across the page, translating observation into intelligence. Command will want to know about this. Command will do whatever command decides to do with the information. Our job is to give them the information. Our job last time was to observe and report too. Look how that turned out. Elena allowed herself a small smile. This is different. Is it? There's no one dying in a valley this time. No stand-down order. No 1,000 Marines running out of ammunition. This is just reconnaissance, watching and reporting. Until it isn't. Until it isn't, Elena agreed. And if it becomes something else, we'll deal with it then. Dana finished her notes and activated their satellite communication system. The report would reach command within minutes. A concise summary of what they had observed, delivered from a position that only they occupied. Intelligence that existed nowhere else until they created it. This was a fundamental truth of reconnaissance work. The people on the ground saw things that satellites and drones could not. They understood context in ways that algorithms could not replicate. They made judgments about what mattered and what didn't, what threatened and what did not, what required action and what could safely be ignored. Elena had spent 9 years developing those judgments. She had made mistakes, learned from them, and refined her understanding of what mattered in the chaos of operations. She had trained herself to see what others missed, to process information faster than her body could sometimes respond, to trust her instincts even when doctrine suggested otherwise. And she had taught Dana everything she knew. They were a team now in a way that went beyond military partnership. They shared a childhood that neither had chosen, a career that both had embraced, and a night on a frozen ridge that had tested everything they believed about duty and judgment and moral courage. Report sent, Dana said. Command acknowledges receipt. They're asking for continued observation and regular updates. Copy. What's the convoy doing? Linked up and stationary. Looks like they're unloading something from the southern vehicles. Can you identify the cargo? Negative. Too much activity around the vehicles. I can see personnel, but the cargo itself is obscured. Elena made a decision. Shift position. I want a better angle on that road junction. They moved carefully, using the terrain to mask their movement, settling into a secondary observation point that offered a clearer view of the junction. It took 7 minutes. When they were set, Dana resumed her observation, while Elena maintained security on their flanks. Got it, Dana said. It's ammunition. They're transferring ammunition from the southern vehicles to the main convoy. Resupply operation. Looks like. And Elena? That's a lot of ammunition. More than 6 vehicles would need for a standard patrol. Elena understood the implication immediately. 6 vehicles with enough ammunition to fight a prolonged engagement were not conducting a routine patrol. They were preparing for something larger, something that command needed to know about. Update the report, she said. Priority traffic. Include ammunition assessment and recommend aerial surveillance on convoy's destination. Copy. The next several hours followed a pattern that Elena knew well. Watch, report, watch again. The convoy eventually moved west, disappearing into mountain passes beyond their line of sight. Dana documented everything: times, speeds, personnel counts, equipment configurations, building a picture that would become part of a larger intelligence mosaic assembled by analysts far from this ridge. By midday, they had contributed 7 separate reports to the intelligence network. 7 pieces of information that would help decision-makers understand what was happening in this region. 7 fragments of truth extracted from the chaos of observation and rendered into language that bureaucracies could process. None of it was dramatic. None of it would ever become a story. It was simply the work, the patient, careful, essential work of people who went where others could not and saw what others could not see. You know what I've been thinking about? Dana asked during a quiet moment. What? That night, Caccarum, the review board finding. What about it? They said our judgment was something doctrine couldn't produce. Training could only partially account for it. Dana paused. What do you think they meant? Elena considered the question. She had asked herself the same thing, in the quiet moments when reflection was unavoidable. I think they meant that rules are designed for normal situations, she said finally. Doctrine tells you what to do when circumstances match expectations. Training prepares you to execute doctrine effectively, but there are moments when circumstances exceed what anyone planned for. Moments when the rules don't fit, and training doesn't cover what's happening. And in those moments, all you have is judgment, experience, the accumulated weight of everything you've learned and everything you've survived. You have to trust yourself to make a decision that no one else can make for you. Dana nodded slowly. The review board said it couldn't be produced, but you produced it. That night, you made decisions that saved 1,000 lives. We made decisions, both of us. Together, you made the call to disobey, and you made the calls that put rounds on target. You kept me alive on that ridge. You managed information I couldn't process while shooting. You carried equipment that I couldn't carry with my knee failing. Elena met her sister's eyes. Whatever that judgment is, whatever the review board meant, it exists in both of us. It exists because we've been training together for 9 years, surviving together for longer than that. It's not mine. It's ours. Dana was quiet for a long moment. Then she smiled, a genuine expression that softened the fatigue lines around her eyes. You're getting sentimental in your old age, she said. 31 isn't old. It's older than 26. Barely. They returned to their observation. The sun moved across the sky, shadows lengthening as afternoon became evening. The valley below remained quiet. No more convoys, no more suspicious activity. But they continued watching because watching was a job. Tomorrow, they would pack up this position and move to another. Next week, they would return to base for debrief and reassignment. Next month, another mission would begin, and the cycle would repeat. This was the life they had chosen, the work that justified the risks, the purpose that made everything else, the cold, the danger, the isolation, worth enduring. Elena looked at her sister, then at the mountains that surrounded them, then at the rifle that had become an extension of her own body over a decade of service. The mountain kept no record. Neither did she. The work was its own sufficient thing.